As mentioned, my name is Greg Lawton. It's a pleasure to be here. I've flown over from Zurich in Switzerland. I'm originally, as mentioned, from the UK. And I'll start with a little bit of background on myself. So, my father once said to me, interesting people are interested, and that is why they're interesting people. So, we're going to spend an afternoon, and obviously people are going to be around. These are the things that I am interested in, and that I can quite confidently hold a conversation in. So if anyone is interested in any of these things, let me know. My training was actually as a physicist to start with, a cosmologist. So I specialized in identifying supermassive black holes in galaxies that are on far redshifts from the Earth and recategorizing them. So people had falsely classified them as stars that were very close to us, and we reclassified them as galaxies that were really far away. And it sounds very silly, but how do you know that something's very close or something's very far away if it's a little bit of light? So I started there. Then I moved into nuclear submarine engineering, build and design. So I was an engineer for the systems on the British nuclear submarine fleet, both the Astute and the Dreadnought. And then I moved into project management and project controls, specifically looking at how to optimize these systems for business delivery, cash and profit. Because if you think about it, a project controls organization is really a business optimizing organization, which is very similar to a physical system that you're trying to model. About 7 years ago, I'd got kind of in that journey, and I'd come to the opinion that artificial intelligence was going to play a major position in the future of the industry. So on that bell-shaped curve, I'm as far to the left as you can possibly be. I've started businesses before. I've had one successful exit already. This is my second major one. And the whole goal was to build the artificial intelligence for project controls going into the next 50 years. So I founded Nodes and Links with a very close friend of mine. And as of today, Nodes and Links is on every single continent. The last continent that we needed to go to was Africa, and PACE helped us do this. That is right, we are actually also in Antarctica. Icebreaker ships and Antarctic research stations. So, and it ranges in a whole number of projects. I've never done mining before. This is also my first dive into the mining industry and the petrochem in Africa and the roads and infrastructure. We do a lot of data centers, a lot of chip fabrication facilities, nuclear reactors, renewable energies, road, rail, infrastructure, lots of government work, and a number of forestry operations, things like this. Basically anywhere that project controls can go. And today, what I want to do is to tell you a story. This is not a business presentation. This is more of a story of my experiences and the learnings and the education that I've had, and to give you all maybe some tools of how to see the world just by reflecting to you on how I see the world. So I think we're in a generational shift right now. I'm going to explain to you why I think that. I'm going to actually dive into the science of economics. So we are going to go a little bit into economic theory. And then that'll come up here with where I think the opportunity is for project controls on this continent. Does that sound like something that's interesting? Beautiful. Okay, let's go wildly left and actually talk about something entirely different. Let's talk about success. I think about success quite a lot. And by success, what I mean is overcoming obstacles that I've decided are obstacles that I need to overcome. And I think everyone in here can appreciate you feel a sense of accomplishment and purpose by doing that, as opposed to having no ambition and no target in life. So when I think about success, I think about three things. One is ambition. The second is discipline. And the third is opportunity. You can't achieve success without all of these three things. And to give evidence of that, I'm actually going to talk to you about my father. So this is my father with my daughter. My daughter's now 6 months old. This was last November. And my father, to me, is an inspiration. He's success. He's the definition of success. There's 3 things that he said to me that he wanted to achieve during his working career. He wanted to give me and my brother a good education. He wanted to pay off their house very early, so they owned their house because they weren't from wealthy beginnings. And he wanted to retire as soon as possible so that he could enjoy life. He retired at 54, and as of today, he is the World Masters rowing champion. So he's actually turned to world sport, and he just travels the world training in rowing with my mum. They seem to be on a perpetual holiday. I know. Let's talk about like his ambition, his discipline, and his opportunity. So before my father retired, he was the managing director, the CEO of WorldPay. It was the largest payments organization, or one of the largest payments organizations in the world. I believe it routed about half of all payments and transactions of the United Kingdom, plus most of Europe. I believe he told me a figure saying he routed about $1 trillion a day, is what went through his organization. My father had the ambition to win at everything that he competed in. And it wasn't aggressive, it was fun. So when he was in work, to retire at 54, you have to reach a certain position. So he wanted to reach that position. He was also incredibly disciplined. So I don't think in 40 years he's missed a gym session. And he also never missed coming home to see me and my brother. So he'd have 13-hour days, he'd walk in the door, and me and my brother would run over, tackle him to the ground, and start fighting. And he was always happy to do this. This is a big question. Opportunity. So what was the opportunity he had? Well, he was in banking. He had 2 world generational shifts. Number 1 was the internet. Number 2 was the financial crash. He ended up being the CEO of the largest payments and transactions company in Europe, which leveraged the internet to send money. Before the internet, how was money sent? Yeah. After the internet, how was money sent? Instantly. And the second was the financial crisis. WorldPay was so big that it couldn't fail. The British government, when Royal Bank of Scotland crashed, had to bail out Royal Bank of Scotland because WorldPay, if it went bust, would have stopped payments and transactions for about 50% of the population. People would not have got paid, people would not be able to pay for groceries, everything. So the British government said, this is too big to fail, therefore you're too big. Sell it. So my father sold WorldPay to Bain Capital and retired at 54. He sold it when he was 53, retired immediately at 54. The 2 generational shifts defined his career. And actually, this is not just one business. There's a whole host of businesses that have done this. A whole host of companies where they've generated enormous success and enormous failures from generational shifts. I'll add another. Blockbuster and Netflix. But I'm sure you're all wondering there, great, well, what is a generational shift? We need to be very specific with our language here. What is it? Well, this is my definition. So I believe a generational shift is an irreversible change, first, that hits at the heart of the value creation process of an industry. I chose those words incredibly specifically. If it is an irreversible change that doesn't hit at the center of the value creation process, it is not generational. I believe most of the people in the room today are mining. How much has blockchain influenced your daily lives at work? Because blockchain is a way of democratizing the sending of information between people across the world. That has nothing to do with digging stuff up. How much has social media changed the way you mine? Nothing. Back to Byron, how much has a computer changed the way you go to work? Has to hit at the heart of the value creation process. So let's actually think about what makes a generational shift. What is the actual science underneath a generational shift? Well, just a show of hands, who here has studied some form of economics? Wonderful. These should be very, very obvious to you then. The first, another show of hands, who has heard of demand and supply? There we go. Economics can be classified to me as a series of graphs. Basically what it is. This is probably the most famous. They call it demand and supply, but it's actually demand, supply, price. So let's think about it. If you have enormous demand and no supply, what happens to price? Okay. If you have very low demand and incredible supply, what happens to price? What happened to oil about 3 years ago? It actually went negative. Oil companies would pay you to fill your car up with fuel, technically. Okay? One of the other curves of economic theory is this, called the marginal cost curve. Okay? This is basically economies of scale. To produce one thing, how much does it cost you to produce that one thing? A lot. What if you produced 1 million things? It costs you less. I believe I was having a conversation with someone who's from the car industry who said to me that to actually bring out a brand new car would actually, if they only sold one car, cars would be about $50 million. But you can buy cars for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. So that is the marginal cost curve of the automotive industry. So let's actually look at some of those businesses that I mentioned before. So we've got all of these here. And Mr. Lawton is not a business, but we'll just go with it. So, before the internet happened, we said it, how was money sent? How was money sent? Physically. Okay. How did you send money physically? You needed a truck, you needed some guards, you needed to print the money itself, you needed to organize the transaction. Put in other words, it costs something. It costs something for me to send you money. Okay? When we brought in the internet, proportionally, how much does it cost to send money? Nothing once you've set up all of the systems. At scale being the very key phrase. If I sent $1 and I had to build the entire internet, very expensive. But when you're sending a trillion a day, it's basically nothing in the grand scheme of things. Do banks still charge for sending money? It's weird that, isn't it? It's a very strange thing. It's weird. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, it means that if you were to start a payments processing business that focused purely on sending money via the internet, and you focused at getting to scale, then you could outcompete every single other person in the world. Do you want to send money for 2% of the cost, or do you want to send money for free? How big did WorldPay get? Enormous. Okay. Let's talk about Uber. So before Uber, how did you order a taxi? I remember this because you're at university, you fall out of the nightclub and you're like, and then you call 888-333 for me. How did you order a taxi?
You already had a cell phone. You didn't have to go to You need a cell phone.
So you had to call someone. Was that someone sitting there for free? No, they had a wage. You had to pay, like part of the taxi operation had to pay them. And the taxi company, Did it buy the taxi cars? Yeah. Sounds like a lot of money out the door to me to be able to give you a ride. So the cost of delivering on a ride was non-zero. What did Uber do? Open question. What did Uber do?
Scale it. Get rid of the capital.
How?
Don't own cars.
They didn't own the cars, so you got rid of that bit. What's the second thing they did?
Application.
They completely automated ordering a ride. You don't need any people. There's literally nobody you can talk to in Uber to order a car. So, what did that do to the cost to Uber of arranging a ride for you? Zero. So, what's the implication? Well, the taxi management business that could get to zero marginal cost at scale outcompetes every other taxi company. How big's Uber today? Are we seeing a little trend? Yeah. Let's do Amazon. Amazon's a fun one for me. Okay. Before Amazon in America, there was Walmart. Why was Walmart dominant? And I'll give you a clue. It was the first supermarket. So why was Walmart dominant?
Economy of scale.
Size and economy of scale. Why? What?
Size and low price.
Okay, how's it doing that?
Economy of scale.
Okay. So what is the difference between a market and a supermarket?
Everything under one roof.
Beautiful. Was it free for Walmart to get everything under one roof? Do you think they had a very, very large procurement department that was trying to find good products to fit on their shelves? And do you think they had an incredibly large real estate department that was finding locations to build their shops and then pay ground rent? So, I'll give you a... Please guess for me what's in here. The marginal cost of adding a stock keeping unit, which is a thing on a shelf, was non-zero. What did Amazon do? How many things can you buy off Amazon?
Anything.
Okay. So what is the cost to Amazon of listing a new product on the shelf? Mm-hmm. So the store that can get to zero marginal cost at scale of adding SKUs becomes the hyperstore, and it can outcompete every other store in the world. How big is Amazon today? Facebook. Facebook is the same. Active daily users. For a newspaper company, the limit, you have to print newspapers, you physically have to print them, and then you have to drive them to where people will buy them. At some point, you can't drive them fast enough because people want daily news. So at some point, you have to build another printing press to then print more papers. So the cost of actually having an active daily user is non-zero. What is the cost of Facebook of people scrolling? Nothing. And there's actually a wonderful book. It's by a scientist called Barabasi. It was written about 3 years before Zuckerberg started Facebook, and it actually predicted Facebook. But Barabasi was a scientist, and Barabasi doesn't know about power law effects in products and venture capitalism. So I can't remember the exact page, but the sentence I read was, like, it was talking about the power of what this social net would be able to do, but he finished the paragraph with, of course it would be practically impossible to build a social network that actually encompassed most of humanity. There we go. So anyway, the marketing hub that can get to zero marginal cost at getting active daily users can outcompete every other marketing hub in the world. There's generally only 2 marketing hubs in the Western world, Google and Meta. And in China, it's ByteDance and whoever owns WeChat. And Alibaba. It's basically it. A generational shift is an irreversible change that hits at the heart of the value creation process. The vast majority of people in an industry cannot name what their value creation process in their industry is. That's the first challenge. And the second challenge is having this information so you know what an irreversible change is. Well, let's talk about what it is for project controls. I'll give people 3 guesses. What do people think the generational shift in project controls is? Okay. Why?
Efficiency.
What is the value creation process in project controls? Producing work and sending it to people who can make decisions based on that work. Okay? What automates producing work? So then there's an obvious question. What is AI? And I'll give someone a chance. Who wants to come up and speak and explain to the audience what AI is? Okay, I'm not going to go into the technical details of what AI is. I'm going to talk about what it is in the context of that generational shift and those technologies over time. So we'll do that with a little game. You're in mining. How is a digger and artificial intelligence the same thing? I'll move on when I've got 3 answers.
Dig into the unknown, hopefully you find something useful.
Dig into the unknown. There we go. Yeah, that's a good one. 2 more. Yeah.
Well, once you know how to operate the digger, you can dig.
Oh, that's a very good one. Once you know how to operate it, you can dig. 1 more.
Outperforms the human.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Outperforms the human. Okay. Let's look at a lot of technologies. All technology in the world is about scaling human productivity. I'll repeat that because that is one of the most important phrases you'll ever hear. All technology in the world is about scaling human productivity. There is no economy without humans. A human does something and a human receives something. Everything in between is just a transformation process. And every currency in the world is just to facilitate that transformation process. The only thing that matters is humans. With a scythe, I can harvest more wheat in an hour than you can pick it up with your hands. Okay? With dynamite, I can mine more tons in an hour than you can with a pickaxe, which is still automation, which is better than you using your hands. Right? With machines, I can travel further and carry heavier loads than you can trying to carry things in your hands or in a sack on your bag. With communication and the internet, I can call more people and I can talk to more people faster than you can running and trying to have a conversation face to face. With artificial intelligence, I can produce more work than you. If you do not have artificial intelligence, you will not outcompete me in terms of producing work. And this actually comes to a phrase that I've said many, many times in presentations in Europe. Artificial intelligence won't replace you, but a human using artificial intelligence will replace you. Okay. Show of hands, who uses a computer today? Okay. Now imagine you're in the 1950s before computers were invented. Show of hands, who would use a computer? At some point, nobody used computers, and then at some point, everybody's using computers. Would someone get a job today in this room who refused to use computers? Okay. So in 5 years' time, would somebody in this room get a job who couldn't use AI? It's that simple. So let's actually think about what AI does for business. It's automation, okay? Forget that it's AI, it's just automation. Well, let's just imagine, before AI, one person sitting at a computer could produce 1 unit of work per hour, whatever that is. The whole point of AI is that it's a multiplying factor. Ryan, yesterday we had a conversation. How long does it take you to get to work in your car?
30 minutes.
How long would it take you to walk there?
An hour.
So the multiplying factor of his car,
He walks really fast.
real fast walking there. Well, let's take it for truth. The multiplying factor, Baron plus car, equals 2 units of work. Okay? But as AI gets better, 1.5, 2, 4, 8, 10, 200, 1,000, 7,000. It's an exponential curve that doesn't stop. And actually, you can see where AI is at any point in time through an equation. But let me actually translate this to another view. Version 1, walking. Version 2, wearing sandals. You don't get stones in your foot, you don't stop. Version 3, a donkey. Version 4, chariot or a carriage. Version 5, a ship with a sail. Version 6, the first car. Version 7, rail. Version 8, more modern cars. Version 9, a plane. Version 10, the internet. I don't need to travel anymore. Now, version 11, spaceflight. This kind of thing. This is how you can assess where AI is, or to be honest, anything. How productive AI is proportional to how advanced it is, because these are thought work. This is thought work. So if it's dumb, it can't produce much thought work. If it's incredibly complex, it can produce thought work. So we've actually seen in the last year AI that can produce images, can produce voice, it can produce video, it can produce text, it can write stories, it can analyze data. So it's getting more advanced. How tailored it is to the process. This is no different than people. Is there anyone in this room who thinks they'd be a fantastic at ballet? Is it because you haven't trained at ballet for 30 years? Okay, who here thinks they're very good at doing projects? Better than the average person in the population? Okay, it's because you're tailored to it. But the big thing is difficulty of access. This is with every technology. If I can't understand it, or I can't get my hands on it, I can't use it. So let's talk about OpenAI for a minute. Did you know that OpenAI actually had GPT in 2020? Google also had it in about 2020. Why did it not explode until 2023?
It was difficult to use.
Mm-hmm. It's because in 2023, they stuck it on the internet and made it a chatbot. People could just log on, start asking questions, and that was really cool. Before that, you had to be a software developer who understood API coding and could push code into GPT, and you had to have the tokens to be able to access it. Yesterday, they launched a speaking version, so now you don't even have to type. You can just speak to it. Is everyone with me so far? Okay. So let's talk about some terminology. There's fundamentally 2 different kinds of AI that you need to be aware of about project controls. Both of them learn from the past. All AI learns from the past. Every person and every human in this room, and actually every animal that has a nervous system, learns from the past. It just depends on what your definition of learning is. All AI learns from the past. One of them is to predict the future. So let's look at productivity data from delivery and use that to predict productivity in the future. And one is about generating new content. This is about trying to be as accurate to the past as possible. This is about trying to create something that never existed in the past. And to Byron's point, this is just another phase in the evolution of humanity. This is all new to us because it is new. But I want you, in your mind's eye, to put yourself 500 years in the future. Do you think that in 500 years, they'll go, ooh, the internet, ooh, artificial intelligence, ooh, computers, my word. They were clever back then, ooh, oh, like, wow, revolutionary. There'll be more. There'll be more and more and more and more and more and more. And to be honest, this is just accelerating in all the tech it accelerates with the amount of people you can throw at this thing. So if you go back 100 years, there were less people on the planet, and there were less people who were in thought roles because most people had to be farmers. As we automated farming, it released people to be thought workers, which then released people to design more stuff for the future. That is, by the way, how humanity works. The second that goes into reverse, we'll stop inventing stuff. This is AI. And what that fundamentally does is it means it takes less time to do stuff, and it gives you more time to think. Now, I got asked the question in Europe and America, well, will this replace me? Well, my simple answer is, if you're really lazy and, to be honest, you're not adding any value, and your entire role is just a repetitive automation that doesn't require any thinking, then I'm sorry, your days are numbered. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You might as well try and head for retirement as fast as you can, or look somewhere else. But if your role involves experience and detailed thinking and contextual understanding and human interaction that is non-trivial, like you actually having to think how you present, you have to think how you interact, how you position points, and you're thinking about how to work the strategy for the future, you're totally fine. And that's because we don't have artificial general intelligence. We have artificial intelligence. It is good at automating simple workflows. It cannot think in context. That is the pursuit of Microsoft and those guys. And they've just announced a data center worth $100 billion that's going to have its own power plant next to it to try and go towards that direction. And governments are also sitting there going, yeah, we're going to regulate this. So let's talk about project controls. Today, in your organizations, is generating a report, or more specifically, getting the information to make a decision, is it super easy? Okay. It's hard. It's non-zero. All right. 5 points to whoever can guess where I'm going with this one. Okay. What happens if you bring AI in to automate elements of those processes? Well, the difficulty of producing a report to influence a decision heads to zero at scale. So what does this mean? It means the project organization that can get to zero difficulty of producing information that allows people to make decisions at scale will execute projects better than anyone else. If you compete on projects, you will win. If you do not do this and you compete on projects, you will lose. Does anybody think that I'm wrong? Okay. So let's look at some examples. First one. What if you could do forecasting? What if forecasting was derived from AI trained on projects data and offered tailored predictions aligned with your teams, the ones that actually produced? Would that be valuable to people in this room? Cool, there it is. Pace has full access to this. Okay, next question. What if you could do detailed risk analysis, QSRAs, QCRAs, etc., after every single update automatically using QSRA powered by artificial intelligence, which is still learning from the past to assign uncertainty and risk, and could be proved to be twice as accurate as humans. Is that valuable? Cool, there it is. The AI is actually running the QSRA there. What if you could guarantee that you could receive status update reports in one day with 0 error and accessible wherever you are? Is that valuable to you? Cool, there it is. Full S-curves with generative AI that actually narrates all of the content, and then it is checked by a human to make sure that it's within context. What if everyone, not just people in project controls, what if project directors, engineers, site surveyors, supply chain, finance, could access project data instantaneously and get answers to their questions without having to depend on people being on site? Would that be valuable? Full generative AI, where you can ask project controls questions and it can actually answer with technical answers that are accurate. And one that I've heard some people want, what if you could model your carbon delivery as project controls KPIs, such as S-curves, you could forecast outturn, and you could analyze what change and delay did to your embedded carbon footprint. There you go. That is why we partnered with Pace. We've been focusing on Europe and America. Opportunistically, companies in Asia and Antarctica and South America have come to us. But when we actually met in the Middle East, the one core principle that Christos and I, my co-founder, and I have is that you partner with pragmatic visionaries. Because it's not about some random ethereal dream of creating AI. It's about actually making material generational change in delivery with people today to their benefit. And I think the one thing to take away from today is that this generational shift isn't happening, it has happened. Past tense. It is just taking its time to percolate across the world. I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. It has happened. It is done. Now it's just a question of how much time it takes to cross the Atlantic or to cross the Pacific, and how much time it takes to get tailored to a specific industry. That is the only question. And there is currently only one company in Africa who actually has access to that. So there's a question called how I get started. Well, actually, this isn't now, it's not a sales pitch. There's actually going to be some technical information. In my experience of big corporate business, there is a catastrophic misunderstanding of what risk is. Is it more risky to start playing with an unknown technology today to see where it can go? Or is it better to just wait and see what happens? That's actually quite a harder question to answer. Let me rephrase it. If you categorically know that that technology is going to be at the heart of a generational shift, at what point do you learn what the technology is about? And then at what point does that technology become fundamental to how you deliver things? And the question is this: would you like to do those two things separately, or would you like to have to do them all at the same time because you're a laggard? That's actually the thing. And by the way, this is the definition of what a venture capital startup is. A venture capital startup is a business whose core objective is to find the global optima business model. It is an experimental organization. The goal is to experiment and to find truth in the world. That is different than a normal organization whose goal is to execute on a business model to produce cash and profit. Experiment, deliver. I would personally advise everyone to separate the time where they need to learn from the time where it becomes absolutely business critical that the thing works and is executed. I would say the people who leave learning to there are the most risky people. So, given that the general shift has happened, what I would hopefully impart to everyone in this room is get started. Just go on your phone, play with AI, just get comfortable with what it can do. Create some pictures, mess around, create new music, implement it a little bit in project controls. Experiment with what it can do with the current processes side by side. It is a learning exercise. And to put that in a different perspective, there's a big thing about contrarian thinking. So let's flip it on its head. Let's go back to my father. What do you think would have happened to my father if he had said, I hate the internet, not going to happen, fuck the financial crash?
He definitely wouldn't be retired.
No.
Or he might be unemployed.
Yeah. Or equally, what would have happened if a company that used to sell film for cameras went, fuck digital cameras? Or what would have happened if a company that used to sell videotapes went, fuck in the internet? Or what will happen if a project company that delivers intelligence says, fuck AI? Now I'll finish up with, we said this was a story and a journey, and I'll finish up with what my ambition is, like why I'm doing this. My ambition is, I want to build the AI workforce that's actually going to lead our industry into the next generation. All of human lives have generally changed when we've uncovered new scale of economics. So for example, when we invented the engine and we could automate a lot of farming, we went from 95% of the world's population in farming to 5%. It's pretty good. Like, let's be honest, I've got a car that can drive me to my house, I've got a TV, I've got internet, I've got aircon, which is an important thing. That leads to progression. And the question I'd ask you is, what's your ambition? What is your ambition? How disciplined are you? The opportunity's here, by the way. That's already on the plate. I'd say, what's your ambition? And how disciplined are you? And I would just encourage everyone to just kind of let that emotion release. We're kind of taught when we start our careers to subdue the emotion we have when we're young adults. Fuck that. Screw it. Why? We live once. I'd rather be doing something where I'm pushing the boundaries and, to be honest, causing problems and mischief than I am just turning up day in, day out to just wait until I'm old enough to leave. So with that, I'd like to finish, and I'd like to open to any questions that people may have. Thank you.